It's official, and it's shocking. Late Thursday night, President Donald Trump took to Truth Social with one of the most explosive statements of his presidency yet. In all caps, he declared, "All trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated." Yes, you heard that right. Every single trade discussion between the United States and Canada has been called off. Why? Because of a video ad, one that Trump claims was fraudulently made by the Ontario government and featured the voice of none other than former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. But what could possibly be so dangerous about an old voice clip of Reagan? And how did this single ad spiral into a full-blown international crisis that's now threatening to cripple billions of dollars in trade? Let's break down what just happened, because the story behind this is stranger, darker, and far more political than it looks on the surface. It started with a campaign. Ontario Premier Doug Ford approved a $75 million U.S. ad blitz, a massive cross-border media push aimed at promoting free trade and warning Americans about the dangers of tariffs. But there was a twist. The ad used audio that sounded exactly like Ronald Reagan, the conservative icon himself, speaking passionately about how tariffs destroy jobs and shrink markets. The only problem? That speech was nearly 40 years old and heavily edited. Within hours, the Ronald Reagan Foundation came out swinging. They accused Canada, specifically Ontario, of misrepresenting Reagan's 1987 address on trade with Japan and said the Ford government never sought permission to use or alter Reagan's words. On the surface, this was a simple copyright and ethics issue. But Trump saw it as something much bigger, a deliberate attack on American policy and on him personally. By Friday morning, Trump was furious. He posted again, doubling down on his claims that the ad was fake and that Canada had fraudulently taken Reagan's voice to undermine U.S. tariffs. He wrote, "Canada is trying to illegally influence the United States Supreme Court in one of the most important rulings in the history of our country." That line raised eyebrows everywhere. What Supreme Court case was he referring to? Sources in Washington claimed the White House believes Canada was trying to sway U.S. opinion on ongoing tariff cases linked to energy exports and agricultural goods. And if that's true, it would mean Ontario's ad wasn't just political messaging. It could be seen as foreign interference. Behind the scenes, tensions have been brewing for months. Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet have been locked in a cold, grinding trade war with the Trump administration, one that's been dragging on since early summer. At first, it was all about tariffs, steel, aluminum, digital taxes. But now, it's spiraled into something much bigger. The Ford ad may have been the final straw. According to internal leaks from Ottawa, Carney's office was blindsided by Trump's statement. Officials reportedly scrambled through the night, trying to confirm whether the termination order was symbolic or real. By morning, Washington had already sent formal notice. Trade talks were suspended indefinitely. Billions in steel, aluminum, and auto exports are now frozen in uncertainty. And for the first time since the 1980s, the U.S.-Canada trade relationship is at breaking point. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Intelligence insiders are whispering that the Reagan ad may not have been produced entirely in Ontario. A leaked memo, allegedly from a U.S. intelligence briefing, suggests American political consultants were involved in scripting and producing parts of the ad. The claim? That it was strategically designed to test Trump's loyalty to traditional Republican ideals. In other words, this may not have been just an ad. It could have been a trap. If that sounds unbelievable, consider this. Ford himself admitted earlier this week that the ad was targeted specifically at Republican districts, the very voter base that keeps Trump's campaign alive. Was the Ontario government trying to influence U.S. voters ahead of the 2026 midterms? Or was this a clever ploy to pressure Trump into backing off his tariffs? Either way, it backfired badly. When reporters pressed Carney about the ad on Thursday, standing beside Ford in Bowmanville, Ontario, his tone was measured but uneasy. He said the U.S. had moved to a sector-by-sector approach, focusing on specific industries like steel, aluminum, and energy. But when asked directly about Trump's claim of fraudulent advertising, Carney simply said, "We'll see." Behind that calm remark, though, officials say Ottawa is panicking. Diplomatic sources claim the Prime Minister's office is now preparing for emergency trade measures, including potential retaliatory tariffs if Trump follows through. Canada's economy, already rattled by energy uncertainty and slowing exports, could take a massive hit if the suspension becomes permanent. And yet, Ford is standing firm. In a fiery response on Friday afternoon, Ford told reporters that Ontario won't apologize for telling the truth about tariffs. He said the ad's purpose was to blast the message straight to the American people. But U.S. officials say the tone crossed a line, with one senior advisor calling it the most aggressive foreign ad campaign ever directed at U.S. voters by a Canadian province. And then, the rumors began. A video clip started circulating online Friday night, supposedly showing a second, banned version of the Reagan ad. This version, which hasn't been verified, allegedly included a digitally enhanced voice line where Reagan appeared to say, "Tariffs destroy freedom." Fact-checkers have not confirmed the clip's authenticity, but that didn't stop it from spreading like wildfire across social media, especially on platforms popular with American conservatives. Within hours, hashtags like #ReaganGate and #BanCanada ads were trending nationwide in the U.S. By Saturday morning, sources in Washington said the Department of Commerce was preparing to announce new retaliatory measures, possibly targeting Canadian energy exports, particularly from Alberta. If that happens, Canada's western provinces could see billions in losses within weeks. But here's what no one's talking about yet. A classified memo leaked late Friday night, reportedly from inside the White House, suggests Trump's move may have been coordinated ahead of time with U.S. trade hawks who've been pushing for a hard break with Canada for months. The memo, marked confidential, allegedly outlines a plan called Project Iron Shield, a proposal to shift U.S. manufacturing dependency away from Canada entirely by 2026. If that document is real and it matches details confirmed by multiple senior insiders, then Trump's announcement wasn't a reaction. It was a strategy. So here's where things stand. A $75 million ad, a decades-old Reagan quote, and one Furious Truth social post have brought U.S. Canada trade to a grinding halt. What started as a messaging campaign has exploded into a geopolitical showdown that's rattling markets, dividing allies, and leaving both sides scrambling for answers. Is this the end of U.S. Canada trade as we know it? Or is this just Trump's latest power play? A high-stakes negotiation tactic before the next big summit? Right now, it's impossible to tell. But one thing's for sure, for the first time in decades, America and Canada are standing on opposite sides of the same border, staring each other down. And as Trump himself said, it's over.